What are the bullies or bullied from your school doing now? My ninth grade bully had a circle of friends who tormented me pretty bad. It was a daily occurrence. They even had a game they called Rochambeau Friday, where they would, at varying points during the day on Fridays, make it a point to seek me out and hit me in the as hard as they could without me seeing them coming. This wasn't the first time I was a target for bullies, and it wasn't the last, but it was the most difficult to bear. So, the bullied, well, after succumbing to my depression through most of my 20s, leading to a complete mental breakdown and mental disorders, I'm now 30 and graduating in the spring from college with some promising opportunities in the field I'm majoring in. I own my home in a town a couple hours away from the one I grew up in, and I'm good friends with my 60-year-old neighbor. I recently told my doctor the first time that I've been depressed for my whole life, and we're looking into getting some medication for that soon. I'd like to start seeing a therapist, but I don't exactly have the money for that at the moment, but maybe soon I will. As for the bullies, well, the main guy ended up becoming a best friend through a series of events. He apologized on multiple occasions. It turns out that we both had similar crappy home lives, but while I sunk into myself and blamed myself, he expressed his anger and depression in outbursts. I just happened to be that target for a couple of years. I could tell that he truly felt bad about it, and it was a yearly, organically occurring conversation we'd have over some drinks. He passed away in a motorcycle wreck a few years ago, and I do miss him. I had the opportunity to speak at his funeral, but I really wanted to tell his story about how we met on such bad terms and how that dynamic changed. But I didn't know how well it'd go over. There was a girl who hung out with that group and wasn't part of the tormenting, but was part of the overall problem. She and I started dating 9 years ago. She's currently asleep in the other room. As for the people in the rest of that group, I don't have a clue. I don't remember their names, so I guess they're not important to me anymore. I heard one person is pretty strung out on hard substances, but that was a few years ago. Oh, and I'm not drawn to them. It just sort of happened to turn out the way it did. So my now-deceased best friend and ex-bully and I got stuck in a class together in my 3rd year of high school. One day we were forced to interact with each other and discovered we shared a passion for music. The same bands, the same musicians, movies, books, the list goes on. We were just different products of a similar home life. As for my girlfriend, she catcalled me at a gas station and didn't realize who I was. I remembered her, but it's hard for me to just stay mad at someone. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I don't think I'm necessarily a compassionate person. I'm actually pretty emotionally broken. Like I said, I do need therapy. That's all just part of who I am, I guess. Story 2. I was a bully and had friends that were bullies too. Don't know what happened to all of them, but some of them I know. I'm in my hometown studying for the national entrance exam and the local university entrance exam. 2 of my friends are already in uni doing chemistry and administration courses. Friends still today. Other is doing uni in another state. We don't talk often, but still maintain contact. As the bullied ones, I know at least a little about all. Number 1 became my boyfriend before yesterday, and we both are studying together in the same course in the local uni. Number 2 is working at a local father's farm and doing very well. The farm is in another county in the state, but he often comes to our town. 3 is in the med course in a uni in the northeast region of our country. Got in this year. 4 runs the brewery of his father, and his craft beer is top-notch. He's doing incredibly well and likes his job so much. I visit him sometimes. Number 5 left the country to study in Europe. Don't have much contact with him, but the last time I checked, he was doing fine. 6 is living in another state with family and studying to get in uni. 7 moved with her boyfriend to a neighboring country and is doing the med course there, planning to go back when finishing. And 8, working and studying to be a psychologist. Damn, they all had a character development arc. Story 3. The elementary school bully is still around the old neighborhood, but I'm not sure about what he does. Delivery driver, according to some people who still have relatives living there, but it also turned out he was just an annoying kid who was making fun of others to feel better about himself. Other former classmates say he was cool once you got past his abrasive facade. Still not a fan of his, though. The most bullied kid in high school completely ignored us the day after graduation, went to college by himself, and he now has a low-level office job for one of the local trade unions. Last time I met him, he was happy to see me, and we had the usual kinda sad what happened to background check on our old classmates. Apparently he didn't hold major grudges anymore. But to be fair, I've been quite lucky to grow up in a relatively quiet and well-adjusted area with no major bullying going on, unless you were actively interacting with notoriously dangerous groups. At worst, it was the usual teenager BS about popular kids, dating drama, and so on. Not really bullying, though. More like vaguely unpleasant interactions to navigate through. Story 4. The only guy who ever tried to bully me and start a fight with me, oddly enough disappeared at sea with some of his sidekick buddies. 4 guys went diving, and as the story goes, as they surfaced, their boat was half sunk. They then continued sinking and they were left miles from shore. However, they were wearing dive gear, meaning tanks, snorkels, masks, fins, BCDs, inflatable life jackets, more or less. He started swimming and the only survivor claims that he saw a buoy and started swimming for it. And when he looked back, the other 3 were out of sight. He was rescued off the buoy and no sign of the other 3 were ever found. There is speculation that there was foul play. Maybe a substance deal gone wrong? Who knows? Only that one guy and he sticks to the story like glue. The boat was retrieved and it had no issues like leaks, though it could be argued that the engines were too large and allowed the back of the boat to be too low or something. It's been 30 years, and the family still have a website out with info on them, but they're gone, man. For extra context, my run-in was with Omar mostly. I was at a park with my cousin and my little sister. He and his buddies just started doing jerkish things, so we left. But my cousin yelled back that he was a jerk. So they surrounded us and we just stood there mouthing off to each other. He wanted to fight but was unwilling to throw the first punch. I was and still am a total pacifist, so I was willing to defend myself but couldn't be goaded into fighting either. His friends, on the other hand, were the type of sidekick guys that say, "Yeah, get him," and stuff like that. It ended with us just angrily walking away from each other. Then, as luck would have it, we went to the same school the next year, with him a year behind me. But that was it. No further conflict. I think actually he turned out to be an okay guy and was well-liked in high school and college. Maybe it was you on the boat. Story 5. I have to share this because I was a bully in my school days and I'm now great friends with 2 dudes I actually used to bully or pick on back in the day. I noticed a lot of people say that a lot of my fellow buddies are now currently struggling with or are already gone substance dependency along with being constantly incarcerated. It's honestly not surprising, as I almost went down a similar path and know way too many who have. I didn't like who I was back then, so I took out that unhappiness out on others and never tried to be better myself. When I didn't have that outlet to bully others as I got older, I turned to substances to fill that void of unloading my unhappiness onto others, and I think that's the case for many others. Fortunately, I got help, grew up and learned to love myself, but many never get that chance, but many who do get it waste it. If you treat yourself poorly, you're going to treat others poorly in kind, and that catches up with you eventually. Karma is most certainly real when it comes to how you treat others. Story 6. One of ours is currently up on charges of criminal confinement, intimidation, and battery. So clearly the same thing they were doing in school 30 years ago. That's the insane thing about most schools' policies of turning a blind eye to bullying. It just teaches the bullies that their crap will be tolerated in the real world. That's not a good lesson to learn. I'm a long time out of school, but it seems to be something that hasn't changed. I was bullied all through elementary school. I had a personal bully, and every few weeks the teachers would be lecturing us after they pulled him off me. They talked about how we needed to get along and how we should try and understand one another and crap like that. They insisted we were friends, and the bully was perfectly happy to go along with that. He always left the lectures smiling. Thing is, I was bullied because I never fought back much. I was awkward and quiet. One day I had finally had enough, though. And after getting pushed down for the umpteenth time, I got back up, knocked him on his bum and knocked his glasses off, and knocked the fire right out of him. He started crying. Well, that just set off the alarm bells. They couldn't get us into the principal's office fast enough. This time I was the one smiling, and he was the blubbering wreck. They called my parents, there was dark muttering about me. My mom told me later they expressed concerns about me potentially having violent tendencies. They muttered about how I was just sitting there grinning to myself like some kind of sociopath, like I couldn't hear them. I got detention and he was picked up by his parents and was out of school for a couple of days. Emotional trauma, supposedly. He left me alone after that, so there was no further problem and my mom raised a stink that prevented any further repercussions. I think when teachers and faculty get jaded, they don't want things to change like that. They figure bullying is going to happen, but as long as it's the same bullies and the same kind of bullying, they're comfortable with it. But something happens to change that. A victim turns the tables, a bully tries to go straight, something escalates. That's dangerous and startles them into action, usually to flatten the first nail to stick out. That's another thing I don't get. They're always lenient on the bullies but punish good kids for standing up for themselves or others. Makes no freaking sense. On a lighter note, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel so you wouldn't miss out on any of my future uploads. Story 7. Recently had a guy start at my work and after a few days I recognized him as my high school bully. I didn't recognize him because he just seemed like an anxious wreck. Anytime we spoke, I was like, geez, this guy's so unsure of himself and thought it was sad. Then I realized who it was. Because of being bullied, I started MMA and ended up having quite a few fights and promised myself that if I ran into the guy, I'd rough him up. But when I was faced with him, I took pity on him. I didn't want to hurt him. I actually felt kind of healing to let that go after so long. I didn't even realize it was a weight I was holding. Oh, and he actually left within a couple of months of starting, so I don't have anything to do with him now. He seemed like a nice enough guy, to be honest. Had a family that he seemed to love. His wife came to pick him up from the work Christmas party, and he was so pumped to see her. Brought her in and introduced her to everyone. Just seemed like a good guy who loved his family. Story 8. Ironically, I just looked, because I was kinda down and feeling like I needed a cheap laugh. After getting out of prison for arson and violating a protective order, he got an iron cross and an SS symbol tattooed on his face, moved to a pretty notorious town with sizable Black and Latino communities. For some reason, he couldn't get or keep a job there and made a whole bunch of enemies who openly threatened him on his own page. First, he sold substances but seems to have been put out of business. He's now homeless and has stolen a ton of electronics and bicycles over the past couple of years from friends and had the same stolen from him. And apparently he's getting mugged on a fairly regular basis, so that's a plus. He's constantly threatening people on Facebook with returning home, here, but they just tell him to go, and he complains they can't afford to. Apparently his mom quit defending him at every turn by declaring, "He's a good Christian." He isn't allowed to see his kids, who seem to be doing great without him. The last sets of photos before he quit posting were from various hotel rooms, frequently captioned with something like, "Anyone got a room for me and my girl for the night? Got that bomb." So yeah, everything turned out better than expected. Another one, not my story, recently moved back to my hometown and ran into one of the old bullies. After some rough years, he's totally turned himself around and distanced himself from the other a-holes. Super nice guy who's now working hard to make something of himself. He apologized profusely for being a jerk and actually wants to be friends, and I'm down for that. We actually have a lot in common. High school bullies turned friends is more common than you think. Story 9. She was working as a nurse at the local hospital, was actually the ER nurse for a family member I was accompanying for support. It was wonderfully awkward on her part, glancing up at me surreptitiously as I beamed and cheerfully greeted her as though we'd been the best of friends. She couldn't get away fast enough. It was the one single time in my life where I could think, "See, this is chicken leg sitting here. This is the one you scoffed and mocked and humiliated. This is the one you offered friendship to as long as no one else finds out about it. You can't even look me in the eye." Man, I wish I had that kind of confidence now. Not nearly as interesting as some of them being extremely stupid and ending up in prison or gone, but not all bullies are cruel and aggressive. Some are just cruel and cunning. I was, by all accounts, polite and courteous. That's the worst thing you can do to those kinds of bullies. Let them know that nothing they could ever do will change you. Then again, that wouldn't work with all of them. Not many bullies remember their victims, after all. I was an exception because I was the one poor kid in an entire great range of pretty and rich people. So yeah. Also, picking on someone doing a service for you is just in bad taste. That's how you get spit in your pizza or coffee or burger. All in all, it wasn't a really big success or anything, but case scenario, the bully had grown up, realized what a crappy thing she did, and felt properly ashamed when she saw me again. And if her conscience regrets it like that, then I don't need to do anything. You don't always get an apology or anything like that, but at least for me, that would be enough to forgive her. I don't know one way or another, so that's just me assuming. Maybe she didn't change and she was just put off. Or maybe she just really couldn't remember where she'd seen me before. We'll never know. It's all just what we tell ourselves so we can shelve the matter and move on. My less kind self from almost 10 years ago just really enjoyed how uncomfortable she was with my presence. Story 10. 2 bullies I know. One did reverse a crowdfunding restaurant biz scam and cheated old folks out of their retirement fund, now hiding at home with his spoils. Another did Forex or crypto MLM scam, flew to China to dodge local enemies, got married, started a hot pot business, and kind of settled there. 2 bullied I know. One is toiling at a construction site, stressfully overworking without overtime pay, and even had to cover resigned colleagues' works without compensation. Boss always yells and swears at him even if he did nothing wrong. Very toxic environment which is physically and mentally taxing. Poor guy. Another studied accounting and worked a 9-to-5 job casually. Doesn't have ambition, just plays video games and watches movies after work. Pretty chill, timid, and meek guy. I play with him occasionally. He's a friendly and cool person. Apparently, most bullies are doing well because they know how to get ahead exploiting others while avoiding consequences. A sad but true reality. Story 11. Bully here. I have a beautiful 2-year-old and in a happy and healthy relationship. Never required any major debts. I don't gamble, drink, or smoke, but I smoke some grass every now and then. And unfortunately, I don't drive a Dirtbag 3000 even though I wish I did. Right after high school, I was doing a bunch of soul searching and going through the onset of my mental illness, very humbling stuff. I've met people who have helped me grow and recognize things I do that could hurt others. It took me years to get into the habit of taking a step back and thinking about my actions or words first, and then began the journey to unlearn and correct toxic traits I was taught. I slowly attempted to contact people whom I know I have hurt in the past to try to make amends. They did good by themselves and cut me out years ago. 27 now, and I can say that I've apologized to almost everyone but one in my past, except one, who keeps me blocked on Facebook. I'm not the perfect human being, but I try damn hard to be better every day. If not for myself, but for my son and my partner. Story 12. This girl that bullied me in grades 8 to 10. Let's call her Jessica. Used to pretend to be nice to you in class and ask questions and be personal, then throw it back at you. In grade 8, before I knew she did this, she sat with me in French class and she was being super sweet and nice to me. I thought I was making a friend. It went downhill when she asked if any of the boys had caught my eye, and I leaned in and whispered to her that I thought Lorne, the guy sitting in front of me, was really cute, and she stood up quickly in the middle of the lesson and said loudly, "Your fat behind has a crush on Lorne?" 4 years later, I was in public transit. We were pulling into the bus station in our town. We got delayed just outside the station because there were 12 cop cars and they had 15 to 18 different cops with guns pointed at the one person laying on the ground, trying to remove their backpack. Bus finally gets past the blockage and I see the person on the ground is Jessica. I can see the tears ripping through her makeup. She looks skinnier than I've ever seen her. The cop opens her backpack and pulls out a freezer bag full of something white. My assumption, based on the cop's reaction, was it was hard substances. Lol. Since then, she's been lodging at the minimum security women's prison. I remembered that we have an online database in my province that's meant for looking up speeding tickets or traffic violations, but all kinds of charges and convictions go up there. I found out 4 months ago, our Jessica was released from prison and sent back within a week for uttering threats of bodily harm, 2 counts of mischief under $5,000, and resisting arrest. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.